On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Clayburgh Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. On Story, presented by Austin Film Festival, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers and directors. This week's On Story, Dead Poets Society Academy Award-winning screenwriter Tom Schulman. In this episode, Tom Schulman walks us through the process of bringing his first screenplay to life with director Peter Weir.
As several people pointed out to me, why would you write something like this on spec when no one would make this movie? And the first person to do that was my agent, who I gave the script to, and he said, wow, this is the best script you've ever written, and I can't sell it, and if you want to sell it, you're going to have to get another agent. So, and he said to me, really, it's one of the best scripts I've ever read, and I can't sell it. And why did you write it? Why would anybody think that a script about a boys' school with, you know, there are almost no girls in the movie, it's a boarding school, it's the 50s, it's the three worst possible words I can think of in a title all together, Dead Poets Society, all in one. So my agent called and said, I found a producer who read it 2 years ago, who can't get it out of his mind. He wants to, he'll option it, I think for $250. Maybe we can get him up to that. And which was just ghastly. And he said, look, I'm not doing any work on this anymore. So, you know, at least he'll put some money in, he'll make some moves. That was a guy named Stephen Haft, who happened to have gone to prep school with Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was running Disney at the time, and he gave it to Jeffrey, and Jeffrey bought it that night. Todd, the sort of shy, mute boy played by Ethan Hawke, was me. And you know, there are theories that a movie, the thing that you write is real. You're really working out something for yourself. The script is the writer's journey. And I guess if that were the case, it would be Todd's journey for me, because I was pathologically shy and terrified of public speaking.
Language was developed for one endeavor, and that is, Mr. Anderson, come on, are you a man or an amoeba? Mr. Perry.
And I thought, you know, writer is perfect for me. I'll write, I'll have my name on the screenplay, I'll send it in, I'll never have to go in and talk to anybody. It'll just be, you know, didn't quite work out that way. I remember when I got the call that Peter wanted to do the movie, they said, you know, he loves the script, he's in, his only problem was with the ending. And I said, he wants to redo the ending, and I liked the ending, so I was worried about that. In the original script, which some of you may have read, on about page 80 or so, the boys show up for class, and the teacher's not there, and they find out he's in the hospital, and they go to see him, and as it turns out, he has, I think, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, one of these cancers that will kill you, but slowly. And that explains the sort of carpe diem of it all. Peter said, it's the easiest rewrite you'll have ever done. You just go and you take that scene out, and that's it. You cut it out, and nothing else changes. I said, but then it doesn't explain why the teacher has this philosophy of life. And he goes, that's just because it's who he is. So he said, and I'm not going to make the movie unless you agree that this is the right thing to do. So I said, well, I don't agree. And he said, I know you don't. And I don't expect. He said, if you told me right now you'd agree, I wouldn't have any respect for you. I know that you believe in this. So I'm coming over to the States in about 2 weeks, and we'll get together and talk about it. So I went home, and I went through made 1,000 reasons why he was wrong, and I was going to win this argument. And he got there, and for 2 or 3 days we were arguing about it. And finally he said to me, look, his first argument was this movie will just be reviewed as a disease of the week kind of movie. It'll be a kind of weepy where this one notion will swallow everything else that you've done in the movie. It'll be about a teacher who's dying. and that's different. And I don't think that's what you want. But he finally said, look, it's easy for a bunch of boys to stand up. It's easy for anybody to stand up for someone who's dying. You know, that's a courtesy almost. He said, but if he's dying, but if he's not dying, then we know they're standing up for what he's taught them, for what he believes in. So I went, you know, that's right. So that was it. He had said to me, by the way, I want you on the set, and by the way, I know that I can tell you want to direct. Most writers want to direct. So, you know, to the degree that you want, consider it a learning experience. You know, he said, I've directed 8 movies, so I'm happy to help anyway. I mean, the most generous man. So I said to Peter, he said, really, just go talk to Robin about this, what you want to change in the scene, and let's see how it works. And I said, well, what if I screw it up? He goes, I'll fix it. And I said, okay. So I walked out there. I saw Robin look back over at Peter, and Peter went, it's okay. And I gave Robin a note, and Robin did it. And Peter said, what do you think? And I said, I don't think it works. He goes, I don't either. And on to the next scene. But I don't think any other writer that I've ever talked about has had an experience with a director with that kind of level of generosity and sort of openness to the writer. And he the first day of right before the movie started, he raised the script up and said, this is why we're all here. This is our Bible. This is what, he didn't mention me, of course, but this is what we're here to do. And he said, I'm a very open director. He said, if you have anybody here, whether you're a grip, whatever, has any ideas, any thoughts, come to me, come to Tom, bring them to anybody. He said, the only thing I ask is that you not be offended if I don't use your idea. And at one point, there's a scene with, I don't even know if we're going to look at it, but there's a scene where Robin is meeting having lunch with a fellow teacher, and Robin quotes quotes a line of poetry that he wrote. And I had written something, and about a week before that scene was to shoot, Robin's stand-in came up to me and said, I wrote a little poem that I think would be perfect for that moment. And I said, okay. So a couple days later, he brought it to me, and it was great. It's wonderful. It's in the movie. So it was because of Peter's, that openness, again, and it was that kind of set where people just, any idea, people came, to him or anyone else, and which I think is a wonderful way to make a movie.
Funny, I never pegged you as a cynic.
Not a cynic. A realist. Show me the heart unfettered by foolish dreams, and I'll show you a happy man.
But only in their dreams can men be truly free. 'Twas always thus, and always thus will be.
Tennyson?
No, Keating.
Whatever changes were necessary, I knew Robin would make. But and although I was worried about Robin because I didn't know what the synthesis between what I had seen of him as a dramatic actor and his madcap, amazing comedy, how that was going to fit into the reality of a teacher. And the very first thing that we shot, we had one day with Robin to shoot an exterior scene. We were shooting pretty late in the year. It was already late fall, I think early November, when we started shooting. So we had one day with him, and he was going to go off to New York and do a play for a couple of weeks and then come back. And Robin was just almost stuck to the word for word to the script. And he seemed almost tight and nervous, and not him. So we shot the scene, and I remember saying to Peter, oh my God, he seems wooden and tight. He goes, I know, we'll figure it out in the 2 weeks that we have to. So when Robin came back, Peter said, before we started shooting, Peter said, I want to do an improv, Robin, and we'll shoot it. And in fact, it's in the movie. He said, if you had to just teach these boys something, anything you'd want to teach them, what would it be? And Robin said, I don't know. Peter said, you want to read to them? He said, yeah, I could read to them. So they found a book. He said, you want to teach them a little Shakespeare? Oh, yes, I could teach them some Shakespeare. So he walked into the room that we were shooting, and the difference between what he had been doing before was that now he was talking to this, even though he was doing all the talking, it was a dialogue, just similar to what he did in stand-up, but he was looking at the kids, looking for their reactions, talking to them, amusing them, the whole bit, and did that improv where he's, the Shakespeare scene where he's John Wayne doing Macbeth.
But if any of you have seen Mr. Marlon Brando,
No, with Shakespeare can be different. Friends, Romans, countrymen. Let me rest.
You can also imagine maybe John Wayne as Macbeth going, well, is this a dagger I see before me?
From that moment on, he was completely connected to the character, and so there are improvisations that he does all the way through. He invented this bell that he dinged whenever a student was wrong. He did all kinds of little stuff.
Anybody?
To feel taller.
No. Thank you for playing, Mr. Dalton.
At that moment, that sort of blend of his dramatic and comedic self, worked for the movie. I went to a place called the Actors and Directors Lab, which was in Los Angeles, and my teacher was a gentleman named Jack Garfine, whose teacher was a famous Broadway director and critic and named Harold Clurman. I wrote a kind of rough draft with Clurman as the teacher, and then realized this isn't going to work. Okay, this should be about a teacher that I had when I was a sophomore in high school. A guy named Sam Pickering, who was a very mischievous, wonderful, inspiring English teacher that I'd been lucky enough to have. And the good news for me is that Pickering had been at my school for 1 year and then disappeared. And so all these rumors went around, what happened? For me, it was this kind of open question, and left my imagination to sort of go somewhere else. So I think if I'd ever known what actually happened to him, I would have never written this. It was the first moment we would have seen with the Robin Williams, with the Keating character, and it had him walking down, the script had him walking down the aisles, looking at the boys, kind of going, sort of seeing something in their eyes that only he could see, and then walking back to the front of the room and jumping up on either his desk or, and, oh, Captain, my Captain, who said that? We shot it. It was good. Robin did a great job with it. And Peter and I both felt like, this is the end of the movie right here. It dies at this moment because it just looks like the teacher is a completely self-absorbed show-off. Then the question was what to do. So suddenly we thought, okay, let's just have him instead. We got to get this. He can't jump up on the desk. So maybe he walks into the room, and yet we still want something that's going to, get our attention as students and we as an audience. So the idea was have him just walk through the classroom, look at the kids, and walk out, and then we'll do the whole scene in the honor room.
Well, come on.
And we were lucky that there was a solution that was so simple. In the honor room itself, that began Robin's sort of improvisational stuff. That helped give him that twinkle and added, obviously, humor to the movie. So it was great stuff. I think my original intent was that somehow these kids were going to find poetry inspiring, and so I sort of pulled out the poetry that had inspired me as a youth and put it in the scene. And the studio and Peter and later me, of course, I worry about everything, was worried that no kids who could relate to this, that a bunch of boys going out into the woods and reading poetry to each other was just not something anybody ever did. And Peter said, the important thing really is there can be some of that, but they have to have fun out there.
In a Messina abode in the Sandkill Road lived a man named William Bloat. Now he had a wife, the plague of his life, who continually got his goat. And one day at dawn, with her night shift on, he slit her bloody throat. Oh, and it gets worse.
The Vachel Lindsay thing at the end with the Congo was actually supposed to be part of another scene. I think in the original script there was a second scene out at the cave after Neil is taken away from the theater. I don't even remember if it's still in the movie. That poem from the Congo was there, so we moved it back.
Then I saw the Congo creeping through the black, cutting through the forest with a golden track. Then I saw the Congo creeping through the black, cutting through the forest with a golden track. Then I saw the Congo creeping through the black, cutting through the forest with a golden track. Then I saw the Congo.
So the scene sort of transformed the beginning, but everything in between is just supposed to be fun. For me, Todd was the main character of the movie. I mean, which is odd because he doesn't talk that much. He's not really driving the action of the movie, but from the point of view of in my point of view anyway, he was the guy who changes the most in the movie. And there's a resistance to change. He's sort of caught up in the Keating aura magic here, but he doesn't want to. He's kicking and screaming, I don't want to get up and do this.
Come on, you can't yawp sitting down. Let's go. Come on, up. Gotta get in yawping stance.
A yawp.
No, not just a yawp. A barbaric yawp.
Yawp.
Come on, louder.
Yawp.
Oh, that's a mouse. Come on, louder.
Yawp.
Oh, good God, boy, yell like that.
There it is.
You see, you have a barbarian in you after all.
And I think Ethan found that. I mean, I would have probably just had Todd sit, kind of in the corner until he finally stands up at the end. And I think, Ethan wisely just started to see that he could give a little bit more voice to the character, but it would be the voice of resistance to change as opposed to just the changing. And that would be another step along the way. Yeah, in the original scene, I think Neil comes upon Todd, and Todd is sad because he's received the desk set, and then he says his father nicknamed him 598, which is the value of all the chemicals in our body if you just had to sell them in the store. So, all the carbon and the various chemicals, that's all we're really worth. So, and it's kind of a self-pitying, as you say, dark scene. And from that moment on, from the time that Todd tells Neil that he's gotten this desk set, everything else in the scene is improvised by Bobby Leonard and Ethan. So they had this idea that the flying desk set, the whole bit.
Todd, I think you're underestimating the value of this desk set. I mean, who would want a football or a baseball? Or a car. Or a car, if they could have a desk set as wonderful as this one. I mean, if I were ever going to buy a desk set twice, I would probably buy this one both times. In fact, the shape is... It's rather aerodynamic, isn't it? You can feel it. This desk set wants to fly. Todd?
When Ethan stands up, he has this look on his face of just excitement and affection. It's wonderful. So that changes and it just really deepens their relationship. And it's an act of defiance that we wouldn't have seen in him had it not been for this scene. So it's really important. Well, of course, the concern is that anything like Carpe Diem taken to an extreme or just that becomes your sort of motto of way of living isn't going to work. Living is more complex than that. So, and the movie is supposed to be a sort of working out of that to some extent. And this is one of the moments where, the rubber meets the road and one of the boys has gone too far and pulled a silly prank. So, and I think Robin had the instinct that it needed to be just lighter, that he needed to be one of the guys coming into the room, not the scolding teacher, which is, I think, the way it was originally written. Because the words are similar, it's just how he did it was much more endearing, I think, and much better for the kids.
See, there's a time for daring, and there's a time for caution. And a wise man understands which is called for.
But I thought you'd like that.
No. You being expelled from school is not daring to me, it's stupid. Because you'll miss some golden opportunities.
Yeah, like what?
Like, if nothing else, the opportunity to attend my classes. Got it, Ace?
Aye, aye, Captain.
Keep your head about you. That goes for the lot of you.
Yes, Captain. Yes, Captain.
Phone call from God. If it had been collect, there It would have been daring.
We started having discussions fairly early on about the suicide. Peter Weir said to me that he had once heard Ingmar Bergman say that if you have a main character in a movie commit suicide, the audience will hate you. So he said, that's our challenge. And I said, what are we going to do about that? He goes, I don't know. So, but we were also concerned that Neil's father seemed too arch, too villainous, too sort of over the top. So, and in the original script, as you said, Neil's father comes to the theater, sees that Neil has warned his son not to do this play. So when he gets to the theater and sees that his son is in it, as he well knows, he comes back during the middle of the play and basically says to Neil, "You're not, get your things, we're leaving." And Neil says, you can't do that. I'm in the play. We don't have anybody else to take my place. He says, I don't care what happens, you're leaving. And he actually drags his son out of the theater, and the play just grinds to a halt. We don't even know what happens in the play. And he takes his son home, and Neil kills himself. And Peter felt that that was just too much. And I had based Neil and his father on a friend of mine that I grew up with. And his father would definitely have come and taken him out of the play in the middle. But nevertheless, we did it this way.
Excuse me.
Neil. Oh, good. Neil. You have the gift. What a performance. You left even me speechless. You have to stay in the car.
Keating, you stay away from my son.
Neil! Neil! Mr. Perry, come on!
Don't make it any worse than it is.
I think for me, it changes the dynamic of the suicide, because I don't think suicide should have felt like an option for Neil. And right now, I ask myself when I see the movie, why doesn't he just run away from home as opposed to killing himself? And I think if his father had been the type of father that had actually dragged him out of the theater, you would have this feeling that his father, if you ran away from home, it wouldn't matter. His father would track him down, at the end of the earth. So, and this is just something, I don't know, we never did it the other way. And I certainly agree that having the father take him out of the play early would have been a very strong and maybe too strong an action, but it changes the suicide. So, because it was a good discussion, but I still wish I could have seen a version where his father pulls him out, because I think the suicide would have worked better. I felt like the hardest thing for me to take in the movie was the suicide. It was just, as an audience, the first time I saw it, I absolutely expected everybody to just walk out of the theater at that point. I mean, I was just, whoa, we have done something truly wrong here. The theme of the movie was something about, sort of this struggle with suffocating authority versus this kind of internal drive for spiritual or liberation. And so the father, like the administration at the school, was an example of suffocating authority. So the more suffocating, the better, as long as it's believable. I mean, the ending was really the most difficult part for me, because I did that thing you're not supposed to do, which is start writing and you don't know your ending, And I had sort of a thought that there would be some sort of trial at the school, and that after the boy's suicide, there would be this kind of kangaroo court, but somehow following some rules that the school had established, and the boys would testify for him and so forth. And so I started writing that trial knowing that this is just total. There's no such thing, and it makes no sense at all. And then as I was writing the trial, at one point, one of the boys, I guess it must have been Ethan's character, Todd, just became tongue-tied. Instead of talking or saying trying to defend, he just stood up on his chair. And as soon as that happened, I went, oh my God, that's the end of the movie. So I dispensed with the trial and put it in the classroom, and then I realized, okay, this could work.
Captain, my captain.
Sit down, Mr. Anderson. You
You hear me? Sit down. Sit down. This is your final warning, Anderson. How dare you? You hear me? Oh, Captain, my Captain. Mr. Overstreet, I warn you. Sit down. Sit down. Sit down. All of you. I want you seated. Sit down. Leave, Mr. Keating.
For more On Story, check out our free podcast at onstory.tv or search the iTunes Store and get the book today, On Story, Screenwriters and Their Craft, on Amazon.